heats the cannabis to the precise temperature where it releases a vapor as opposed to a smoke. It's much more economical because when you roll a joint, probably 60% of it goes up in smoke and doesn't enter the human body. The science of cannabis is progressing rapidly, although you don't hear a lot about it. A lot of research has been done on endocannabinoids and the discovery that human beings all have a mechanism in the brain which mimics THC. We have cannabinoid receptors. We've also got them in the stomach and the gut. And this may well explain human evolution over a long period. People who roll long, skinny, slim joints are possibly facing a greater health risk than short, fat joints, because the temperature that the smoke reaches when you're drawing it through a long tube is greater than a short, fat spliff. But of course, we live in a culture where you can't really admit that millions of people use cannabis, and that's one of the things we've got to overcome. When I first became interested in cannabis and the law, if you got arrested in England, the consequences were very severe. The police would burst into somebody's home. If they couldn't find cannabis, they'd literally scrape their fingernails to get enough for a conviction. If it was a parent with children, the children could be taken into care purely because the parents happened to be cannabis users. No evidence of any harm to the children. We live in a society now where some countries have the death penalty for cannabis, but strangely, people still grow and use cannabis in those countries. There's amazing research going on, not just with sniffer dogs, but sniffer bees and wasps. Because I've worked as a lawyer for 30 years, I've seen the pain and the harm that prohibition causes. And it's prohibition that's the real killer here. And it's driving the issue underground. It stops honest education. And that's what we've all got to unite and fight. I know a lot of the stalls, or shall I say businesses here, are worried about changes in the law. And we've all got to unite and definitely work together, European-wide, to fight these issues. Can people understand? Do you want me to slow down? I've got lots of specific information. If anyone's got questions afterwards about medical issues or what's happening in England, I don't know what your perception is of UK cannabis laws. We thought we were successful 3 or 4 years ago when cannabis was downgraded in law to category C and the police decided we're not going to arrest people. Our current Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, has decided he's going to change the policy and presumably go out arresting 100,000 people again. And there's so much hysteria about skunk, it's driving me crazy. We never hear the debate about the broad range of skunk, the difference between outdoor and indoor, the difference between organic, properly dried, the way bacteria can accumulate. And of course, we're never going to get that under prohibition because it's all driven underground, can't be talked about. One statistic that applies to England is that more people use cannabis in the UK than go to church on Sundays. I don't know if that applies yet in Portugal. As I said before, it's the most widely researched plant in the planet. It's probably grown in more other countries than any other plant. And yet still, there's so much ignorance. If man ever decides to invade another planet, I can guarantee hemp and cânhamo seeds will be first on the list. We've had stories recently about hospitals that are refusing to give transplants to people who happen to be cannabis users. The official policy in America, federal policy, is that cannabis has no medicinal value and hemp has absolutely no nutritional value. That's all because of the war on drugs, of course. The anomaly is there are certain areas in the USA, certain states, where people can join cooperatives and get a license to use cannabis legally, medicinally. There have been cases where people have successfully sued the police and the police have had to return their cannabis. So it's not all negative. Other issues that have happened recently, we had an organisation in England that used to put a measured amount of cannabis in chocolate bars and send it through the post to people who've been vetted as legitimate MS sufferers of multiple sclerosis. This operation went on 4 or 5 years with the knowledge of police and the government, but because of the new agenda, the operation was closed down. The other setback for medical users in the UK was that our highest court, the Court of Appeal, decided to remove the defence in law of medical necessity. I've successfully defended people who've been charged, taken to court, where it's been explained to a jury their use or growing or sharing or supplying of medicinal cannabis is for legitimate reasons. An English jury had the right in law to return a not guilty verdict. Unfortunately, the Court of Appeal overruled that. So we're having to fight a lot of these battles all over again. Many people think that the system in Holland of Dutch cannabis cafes just suddenly appeared one night, but it was a long struggle. They kept being raided, closed down, and some of the characters involved wouldn't give up easily, and we have the situation that we have now in Holland. It's not perfect, it's under threat from the extreme right-wing government, but it's definitely superior to virtually any other European country that I've seen. I know there's been great progress in Spain, and I hope that Portugal will echo that progress and possibly get into first place in the European League. Learn from all the mistakes of other countries, use the climate that you've got, and dispense honest education. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them. And my friend and colleague Tony does have a sample of hemp cream with him, which we'll try and put into suitable glass bottles tonight or tomorrow. It has a calendula base, and it's got a concentrated extract of hemp seed oil in it, and some of the other versions have a concentration from female buds. It's particularly useful in a massage form, and it certainly breaks down a lot of the prejudice. If you've got elderly relatives who would run a mile at the very mention of cannabis, but you know that they have medical conditions, and there are far more conditions on that list than there are there. If you massage some of this in, it breaks down prejudices. It's got no adverse side effects that I'm aware of. And similarly, Tony has developed cannabis tinctures over the years, some of which are high in THC, some of which have a high ratio of CBD. And through his work, and having literally thousands of patients that he's treated, some of them referred by hospitals in London, he's developed different forms of medicinal cannabis for different conditions. The problem with Sativex is it's just one spray, combination of CBD and THC, not as versatile as some of the products that Tony has evolved. I can see some of you enjoying the moisturizing properties of the cream and possibly the aroma too. The problem with tinctures, as I mentioned, that cannabis can't be boiled in water. You can only extract the active ingredients from alcohol or fats or something like milk. And the most effective tinctures are made with ethanol, sort of 90% pure alcohol, so they are very strong when used under the tongue. So at the one end, we've got a problem in England with big business growers, typified by groups from the Vietnamese community who use and exploit young teenagers to act as gardeners in properties. The skunk that they're growing is heavily laden and full of chemicals. It's not